So Solas, yes, Solas was created before the International Maritime Organization. We have created a much more rigorous and much more cohesive legislation. With Solas, it is a very large publication, and it's a very large regulation. It talks about watertight doors, watertight integrity, how many watertight compartments are we supposed to have? How many, or how much permeability does the vessel have? Or how much is it required? It goes over the special life-saving equipment. And this was the big one. Okay. The life-saving equipment was huge. Lifeboats, life rafts, life jackets, immersion suits. How many did you have to have to all of that? Distress signals, what did you have to have? And did you have to have backups? Steering gear, okay? We talked about pumps and steering gear and anything that's machinery. That's all regulated inside the Solas requirements. Okay? Your logbook. As much as we sit here and say that the logbook and having watertight integrity and being seaworthy is inputted into the logbook, so are your regulations. Okay? So when you write in that all watertight compartments are secured as per 33 CFR 162, you're going back into the regulations from the CFRs into Solas, which they're the same, and stating, yes, I certify that we're good to go. We can maintain our seaworthiness. Everything's locked up. Okay? But this wonderful piece of legislation is growing, and you'll see this growth in something as small as the International Ship and Port Security Plan. The ISPS is a portion of Solas. That's Chapter 11. Okay. The next one that we have is the ISM. Okay. The International Safety Management Code. Okay. So the ISM, International Safety Management, was spawned from the Herald of Free Enterprise. And if you notice, the Herald of Free Enterprise is a really pretty ro-ro ferry. Okay. They left the dock, and within 5 minutes of leaving the dock, the vessel sank. And it was a huge, major investigation as to why this happened. And so, as it is known, there was the chief mate who was in charge of closing the bow door that led to the cars being on board. He was in charge of closing the bow door, and every once in a while the bosun would do it. And so once they finished loading cars on board the vessel, the chief mate was standing there and he saw a shadow. And he thought it was the bosun going to close the bow door. And so he said, okay, no big deal. I'm going to go walk up to the bridge because that's where I have to be. The bosun will close the door. Well, the bosun was actually sleeping. So when the chief mate went up, he told the captain, yes, the watertight door is secured. And we are ready to go. When in reality, there was no indication letting the captain or the chief mate on the bridge know that it was not closed. There was no indication that the bosun was asleep. And because of time-sensitive requirements, I mean, they had to leave the dock within that time frame, or they were going to be late on the other side. They said, screw it, we'll just go. Okay. So it's the hopes and the prayers and assuming that somebody was doing their job properly that created this situation where the bow door was open, and when they left the dock, water came flooding in. The water did not have anywhere to go other than inside the entire car deck, and it flooded it within that 5 minutes. And that's where it sank. But instead of actually sinking straight down, the vessel tipped over on its side and landed on a beach. And that was the only saving grace. Okay. The International Safety Management created requirements and standard operating procedures. It's not, oh, well, I am guessing or I am assuming that the bosun is taking care of closing the bow door. If that's his job, the chief mate has to radio and tell or ask the bosun, is this closed? Yes or no? And if he doesn't hear anything from the bosun, is it open or closed? You assume that it's open. Okay. The bow door, there was no indications up on the bridge stating that that watertight door was open. Now there's actually lights. And if you go onto the car carriers, you'll find that those car carriers have lights up on the bridge stating whether the doors are open or shut. Even the weather doors, they have indications saying whether they are open or shut. Okay. Watertight integrity. Because of the way that the car deck was set up, they've actually created watertight doors that shoot up, or not watertight doors, but brakes that shoot up so that water can't keep going down the deck and flooding that deck. So there was a lot of things that happened. What it also did was required a designated person ashore. So this ISM, the Safety Management System, is this huge entire book and a breathing document that has to get vetted. Not only from us, but from your company. So your DPA, designated person ashore, comes on board and they look at your safety management system and your booklet and make sure that you are upholding those standards. You'll see it all the time. You get audited once a year. All right. So, next one. For IMO. Marpol. Okay. Maritime Pollution Act, or Convention. The story on this one. The Torrey Canyon. The Torrey Canyon ran aground and it started leaking oil. And this is what is now known as the very first super oil spill. It ran aground and started leaking oil, and the vessel wouldn't stop leaking oil. It was hitting Germany and France and all these other places. And it was getting to the point where they said they had to do something. And so in an effort to sink the ship, to make it stop spilling oil, they actually bombed the vessel. Yes, they actually bombed the vessel. It didn't help because all they did was just sink the vessel and it kept on spewing out. Okay. So the question is who's responsible and who's liable for taking control or for paying for the damages, and who do we fine? Okay. So maritime pollution was basically the first act that was created in order to make somebody liable for the damage of an oil spill and what happens in the event of an oil spill and requiring the insurance for the oil spill. Now we have oil spill. Chemicals. If you're carrying in bulk, there's certain requirements that you have to maintain. Sewage. Sewage is a big one. All right. Anybody who's dealt with sewage, it is raw, it's nasty, and it has lots of germs. Okay? So they make it a point to say that if you are within 3 miles of the coast, you can't dump it. You have to macerate it. You can't dump it inland, nothing. Okay? Garbage. Okay? If any of you have gone out and just hung around the beaches of California, or hung around the beaches of Mexico, you'll find that there's a lot of plastic. There's a lot of garbage out there. This is supposed to help with the garbage. The biggest one that they have done is said no dumping of plastic overboard whatsoever. It's even gotten to the point where if you can't dump dunnage, you can't dump anything large, Anything that goes in has to be food stuff. If you're within a special area, such as the Caribbean or the Mediterranean, those areas are special to where things don't move very often, and so it sits stagnant. You can't even put whole food items in there. You have to macerate it. You have to bring it down to little bits. Okay? So this summer, unfortunately, as you're transiting through the Caribbean, you will get the pleasure of learning what macerating and how to grind up your food waste. Okay? Because that's the only way to get it off the ship without holding on to it. A couple years ago, actually I'm going to say this one, 2001, 2002, we had a scout vessel that went through the Panama Canal, and they were actually holding on to their food waste and all of their garbage on board because it was easier for them than having to just dump it. When they got to the Panama Canal, it was so blistering ass hot because they couldn't get rid of their food. It just sat in the garbage cans. Well, guess what happens to the garbage cans? Okay? Yes. So it's extremely hard to handle food waste like that. That's why they say, okay, well, yes, as long as you macerate it, you can get it off the vessel, but it has to be within these certain requirements. So let's talk about this, because it was a question. Well, I was under the impression that you can throw an apple core in the water if you see. Yes, you're not allowed to. For food waste, if you're within 3 miles of land, it can go in as long as it's ground. Okay. If it's not ground, you're permitted from 3 all the way into the high seas. But you can't do it within special areas. And if you're next to offshore platforms. Okay. So the Caribbean Sea, Gulf of Mexico, Mediterranean Sea, those are all special areas that you can't dump regular food waste without grounding or grinding it. Okay. Oils and wash water. So when we talk about the wash water, we're talking about gray water. So laundry, where does it go? You obviously have to put soap in to clean your clothes. So can we put that straight back into the water? Not really. They don't like it. Well, but in certain areas we can. Okay. Dead animals. So yes, we ship cows from Hawaii back to the United States. We also ship sheep, cattle from Australia over to the Middle East. Livestock, the movement of livestock is huge. Okay. What happens when an animal dies? What? Yes. We throw it overboard. Okay? But there's specific areas where you can and cannot throw a carcass overboard. Now, mind you, you can't keep that carcass on board the vessel. If you keep that carcass on board the vessel, you risk spreading disease to all the rest of the vessel, or other livestock. So it's kind of mandatory to get it off the boat, throw it overboard. But you can't throw it overboard within 3 miles. Or even, what is this? As far from the nearest land as possible en route. Okay. Last one for Marpol. So we talked about the large amount of sulfur in fuel oil, heavy fuel oil, diesel, so on. We have gotten to the point where we have found that emissions from ships is one of the major pollutants of the world. And the reason why is the sulfur. The sulfur creates acid rain, and then that gets all over the place. And it's killing rainforests, it's doing damage to our waterways, it's doing damage to the earth. And it's also doing damage to our environment and our ozone. Okay? So we're getting to a point where we're saying, okay, we have to stop using sulfur. The first thing that we do is say, in these special areas, special emission areas, you can't use a high sulfur fuel. So when you come into the United States within 200 miles, you have to change over to ultra low sulfur fuel oil, which is less than 1% sulfur. As of right now, the entire world, if you're outside of the United States or the Black Sea, there's a couple other places that you can't use low sulfur, or there's a couple of places that are mandating low sulfur fuel oil. Anywhere else, up until 2020, you can use fuel that is slightly more. Right now it's, don't quote me on this one. I think it's right at 5%. But starting in 2020, that's changing. Okay? That's changing to where every fuel that a ship uses has to be under 1% sulfur. What does that mean to our industry? Especially since we just looked at the numbers. It's going to be more expensive. There's going to be a higher demand for ultra low sulfur fuel oils. Okay. What's going to happen to the price of shipping? It's going to increase. Container ships, that bumper adjustment factor, that BAF number, they're estimating that it's going to cost another $120 per container per trade route to move. Yeah. But it's the price that we're paying to be kinder to our environment, or we're not going to have an environment left. Okay. STCWs, standards and training, certification, and watch standing. So we've talked about this in class. VPDSD, SSAR, those two are both considered STCW classes. What else? Industrial Lights Magic, Industrial Equipment and Safety, that one's required for an STCW. Which other one? Marine Survival, Marine Survival Lab. All of those are STCWs, stating that this is the competency. You have to maintain you have to be assessed and have a knowledge of all of these competencies. I'm going to give you a hint. There are over 300 sign-offs that we are mandated to do for each and every one of you. Starting from freshman year all the way over to senior year. And that's not including all the ones that are for the engineers. That's not including for all of your ABs, your ordinary seamen. That's not including your chief mates or your masters. There's a ton more for those. Okay. The other thing that it does, work rest hours. Up here in the right-hand corner, okay, this is what we call the ISF Watchkeeper. You record all the hours that you work and all the hours that you are resting. Per requirement, each and every one of you, when you step on board a ship, have to have 77 hours of rest within a 7-day period. That's 11 hours per day. Okay. You notice over here on the right hand, you'll have some colors that are green, some colors that are blue during the month. You also have one that's red. Okay. That red one is a violation of STCW work rest hours, meaning that you do not get 11 hours of rest. And a lot of times where we get screwed is having a full solid 6 hours at minimum. Okay. So if I work a 12 to 16 watch, and I'm supposed to have 8 hours off, and then I work another 12 to midnight, That gives me 12 hours or 16 hours of rest. But that's not where my money is, and that's just the watch standing portion. I still have to do all of my, as a second mate, I still have to do all of my navigation work because I can't do that on watch. Okay, so I'm doing overtime, chart corrections, updating the ECDIS, making sure that all the equipment is right, doing the voyage planning. On average, I could be doing 4 hours a day of just that. Okay, so I'm doing 8 hours of work plus 4 hours of overtime. That gives me 12 hours. Well, what if we're going in to tie up and it's in my 8 hours of the off time, my technical nap time?
You keep working.
Well, I'm gonna work. But if I don't, if we come in and it splits my 8 hours out of 4 to 4, so 4 hours before I get called out, 4 hours after my call out, I can finally go to sleep. Guess what? I got a 4-hour chunk. I work for 4 hours. I've got a 4-hour chunk. I work for 30 minutes. Another 4-hour chunk. That means I did not get a 6-hour rest period. I'm in violation of my work rest period. 5 seconds. Done. Okay. And this is where pre-planning has to come in coordination of work rest hours. Who's going to be going, or who's going to be tying up the ship, who is not. Well, in reality, if you're working on a 3-mate ship and you're coming in and out of port every single day, hey, guess what? You're never, ever, ever, ever going to get a full solid 6 hours. Somebody will always be in violation. So what do? What is the actual plan and how do we fix that? Oh, don't say that. We do not lie. We don't lie. Technically, if you are in violation, that time is supposed to be made up. So one day you're in violation, the next day you don't do overtime that day. You get that extra time to relax and rest. The work rest hours is supposed to help stop the major issues on fatigue. Okay. All of you are feeling it. It is week what? This is week 5, week 6. So this is week 6 of your college career. For most of you. My apologies. For most of you, this is week 6 of your college career. And I have a feeling that not every single one of you can figure out how to make 8 hours of sleep work. And on average, all of you, or some of you, are getting about 6 hours of sleep. How do you feel?
Phenomenal.
I'm surprised. I think that was a joke. I know you were. We were talking about it yesterday. In 4 hours of sleep, how are you still walking? Exactly. Okay.
We do that every day.
This is supposed to be helping with that so that by the time you get off your ship, you are not stammering and having a hell of a time. You're actually able to do your job. Because a lot of the human error issues that we have in incidences is because of human fatigue. Okay. All right, fitness test. STCW mandates a fitness test. We used to do it every 5 years, and it was kind of okay. But now we're cracking down on the lack of fitness. Okay. I'll be honest with you. One of my favorite buddies, Bodie, big Bo dog. The guy, when he walked into school, could not fit into an immersion suit. Okay? He couldn't even go through a scuttle. And in order for him to go through the program, he lost the weight, and right before freshman cruise, he was able to get into a Gumby suit and get into the ship. Or get onto the ship. Okay. So he lost, I have to say, about 100 pounds. Yes. But the requirements for fitness was so different back then, where if I remember correctly, you guys go through a rigorous fitness test where they actually make you pick up a 50-pound box and go walking around with it. You actually have to step over the top of a watertight door. Have you guys done that?
No, I swam on the
Really?
lake and that's actually work.
Well, okay, so you swam. Yes, you had to do it for work. But those are the actual standards that were mandated for. I kid you not, my doctor looked at me and said, "Can you walk over a watertight door?"
Oh, that was a piece of paper.
Yes.
Can you climb a ladder?
Can I climb a ladder?
The
Can I
doctor
do
just
this?
asked you and signed off.
Can I touch my toe to my nose? Type of deal.
So that was part of the school paperwork.
Yeah, that is a piece of paperwork that you have to fill out. And guess what?
I remember it now.
Every 2 years from here forward, you would have to do that physical. Certain medicines, if you get on board and you run out, you're done. You're toast. Okay? So they're searching and they're looking for certain medical conditions because it is more of a hazard to your health to get on board a vessel with that than it is for anybody else. Okay? And they want to make sure that you, as a person, comes back without any incident and you can do the job and you are physically fit to handle that fatigue. Okay? So STCW is a huge thing. All right. So, let's talk about how we actually regulate this. Okay? I joke and I kid and I laugh about the fact that Panama is a flag of convenience and that their safety standards are ridiculously low. Okay. There's a lot of companies who go to Panama and say, we can't get our annual inspection for Solas. And Panama says, okay, well, next time you come in, here's an extension. When you come back into Panama, we'll get you squared away. They're at a point where it wasn't being enforced. Like they said, yes, we have these regulations in place, and because we say that they're in place, that they're obviously getting done on board the vessels. How many people actually believe that happens? If I just put a regulation in place that'll get followed on a ship. How many people would believe that? No, I wouldn't. Okay, that's a joke. So the enforcement, how do we create an enforcement for these vessels in order to make sure that they are doing what they're told?
Port state control.
Thank you very much. Beautiful. Port state control. Okay.
You can this down.
Port state control. They go through and they do regular inspections on board vessels, on any foreign vessel that enters their port. Okay. For us, the Coast Guard can get on board any vessel and do an inspection for the United States. Okay. So if a Panamanian flag vessel comes in, it looks suspicious, they can say, okay, well, we're going to board your vessel and we're going to check for your Solas requirements. And if they start seeing things that are amiss, guess what? They can detain them. They can tell a vessel, no, you are not allowed to leave the dock. And if they say, we're going to leave the dock, the Coast Guard can put out and say that you are no longer allowed to enter U.S. waters. Okay. That's what port state control does. Is they literally go around checking and making sure that things are being solved. So, within port state control, we have what are called memorandum of understanding. We have Tokyo MOU and we have Paris MOU. And these two groups, it's just essentially a bunch of actual countries who get together and say, we're going to maintain these standards so that when you come into our ports, you don't have to get inspected 5 different times, and especially in Europe. Okay, so if I go from the UK over to Germany, over to France, and then around into Italy, and I look like a suspicious vessel, which we'll talk about suspicious vessels here in a second, I will get inspected 5 different times if we didn't have the Paris MOU. Okay. So now that we have the Paris MOU, Germany, the UK, and France are all a group where they say, if we look at these vessels, then we'll deem them okay, and hopefully, if they don't look suspicious, they won't get looked at again for another 12 months. They also put out a list of detentions, anything that's wrong. They have a white, gray, and a blacklist. Meaning, if you're blacklisted, you're not allowed into those ports. Okay. Where is it? So, this right here is actually an Android product, Android app that I was able to download from Lloyd's of London. And it's essentially a port state control checklist of all the things that they're looking for if you come on, or if they come on board. And it's really nice to have have a checklist, because at this point I can look at it and say, do I have this already? Okay. For port state control, they do have a target criteria asking or looking for certain things. First one, is your ship registered with a flag on the MOU blacklist of flags? So, am I already on the shit list because my country sucks? By the way, it was Liberia? I can't remember off the top of my head. But there are probably 4 or 5 big ones that we talk about that's on that list. Okay. Are your ship's classification certificates issued by a non-recognized organization? Okay. Remember we talked about North Korea having their own classification society? Is it recognized or is it not? Okay. Is your ship more than 10 years old? Japan has a regulation stating that if your vessel is more than 30 years old, it's not allowed inside the territorial waters. But here, if your vessel is 10 years old, it automatically makes it an older vessel. Equipment's bound to start running down, breaking. And so they're going to start inspecting it to make sure that you are in compliance. Okay? Has your ship's flag administration not ratified all conventions? That means, do they adhere to STCW? Do they adhere to Solas? Do they adhere to the ISM, ISPS? Okay, I'll be honest with you. The United States is not ratified, or does not have ISM ratified. So that is a portion that puts us on the, hey, let's take a look at this list. Okay. Is your recognized organization's class deficiency ratio above average? Are you on the gray list? Have you visited that port within the last 12 months? If no, guess what? Expect to be aborted. Has your ship not been inspected in the last 6 months? Have any deficiencies been found during port state control inspections of your ship within the last 12 months? Okay. Has your ship been detained? Yes, we were detained. Are there outstanding deficiencies from the last inspection? Yes. It was, no. We fixed it. Nice try. Okay. We fixed it. It just became another problem. Okay. But those are the questions that they're going to ask when a vessel comes in, and it will be grounds for them to look at your vessel again. Okay. Where is it? Okay. So here on Paris MOU, here's a list of all the vessels that have been detained. Yes. Meaning that all of these vessels are not allowed into a port that is recognized under the Paris MOU. Here is the black, white, and gray list. Okay? So under the white list, under the Paris MOU, the number one was France, with 0 detentions, 0 findings. Yes, sir.
Can't ship to all.
Yes, they can. The ship has to be, under a flag that is not recognized on the blacklist. Okay. If the blacklist country actually cleans up their act, they can move from the blacklist of the gray list or white list. Okay. But it's a matter of getting it re-inspected and looked at over and over and over again and finding clean ships. No issues. No detentions. I know I joke about this all the time. But down here, number 35 on the white list, is Panama. Marshall Islands is number 12. The Bahamas is 8. And down here on the gray list, okay, so we don't like being on this list. Okay, so the white list, the gray list, and the black list. The way that this is set up, it's divided by countries and divided by the flags. France was inspected, or vessels of France was inspected 280 times, and in those 280 times, there were 0 deficiencies, 0 issues, and no detentions. Okay. In order for you to be on the white list, or if you have more than 7% of your inspections find something, then you're put on the gray list. So we were inspected 203 times. We had 9 detentions from 2015 to 2017. That puts us on the gray list. Okay. For the black list, it's 15%. So Belize, Cook Islands, Vanuatu, Cambodia, Ukraine, Palau, Tanzania, they're all down there on the black list. Remember how I was telling you about Tanzania and then closing down their registry to figure out what's going on? This is one of the major reasons why, because their ships, every single time they got, or not every single time, but 15% of the time when they got inspected, they had a detention. They were also caught in some smuggling. And it was getting to the point where Their name was just getting screwed up. Insurance was getting higher. Okay? So down here, Tanzania, out of 259 times, 53 became, or had detentions. Congo, out of 104, 28 of those 104 inspections had detentions. Okay. Do you get put on the blacklist? You can be told, no, you are not allowed back. You are not safe enough for our requirements. Okay?